Well, today the interview is with Perry Kemp, and 5 years ago we interviewed your father,
Yes.
Willie B. Kemp, and you were mentioned in that interview.
And it's kind of strange that I'm being interviewed. I'm supposed to be the kid. And now I've grown up to be interviewed.
Well, it's time for the kid to be interviewed, I think, today.
Right.
So, let's see, you were actually born in Atlanta, but you were living, your parents were living in Ackworth at the time you were born at Crawford Lawn?
Correct. The obstetrician was in Atlanta. People either went to Atlanta or Kennestone, which was a fledgling hospital, but the real specialists were in Atlanta. So Crawford Lawn was there. My mom had worked in Atlanta, and I guess they took a chance to drive to Atlanta without an interstate before she had me. But everything went fine. But we've always lived here in Ackworth.
So what year would that have been that you were born?
That's 1952.
52. Okay.
Right. My wife told our granddaughter when she was little that we were born in 52, and she asked us if that was 18 or 19.
We'll assume it was 19.
Right.
Okay. And then your parents, they were living with your mother's parents at that time?
Right. The house on Rockdale Farm was the house that overlooked the Shell station and the railroad, and Mom and Dad lived in an apartment that was on the side of that house.
Oh.
And lived there for a couple of years until I was about 2 years old, and then bought a house on Collins Avenue.
Uh-huh.
So we just moved across town.
Okay. So the apartment was like a detached?
No, it was attached. It was, I don't know how, they got it built that way, but they had a separate door, but it was right there in the main house.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
And then within a few years, they moved over to Collins Avenue and didn't stay there very long either, though, did they?
Well, when I was 12, they were there about 10 years.
Okay.
And when I was 12, we moved over to the Lakewood Drive house.
You went through Ackworth, and let's see, somewhere along the line, you would have been about 12, I guess, when your father bought
That's exactly
bought
correct.
the Ackworth Pharmacy.
1964. He had worked for Dr. L.S. James. He originally came out of pharmacy school, went to work for Dr. Lacey, and didn't really gel with Dr. Lacey. And Dr. James was so honorable, he wouldn't ask Dad to come to work for him, but he did it through a third party. Have Willie B come and talk to me. And he did. And then in 1964, Dr. James said, "You need to buy the pharmacy for me as I retire." And Dad said, "I can't afford that." He says, "We'll make it where you can." So he was just a super guy. So Dad gradually bought the pharmacy and took it over, and then sold out part of it to Carlos Dyer, who was another young pharmacist who actually married my cousin June Kemp. So now Carlos is family.
He wasn't until...
He wasn't until he married June.
Oh, I see.
His Dad's brother's daughter.
Uh-huh.
And so Dad and Carlos became partners and just, did a wonderful job. So I was 12. Dad let me work the soda fountain Sunday afternoons from 1:30 to 6. Now, we were open from 9 to 11, 1:30 to 6 on Sundays, so we could all go to church. And but we had to have, prescription service for everybody. So 1:30 to 6, I would work the soda fountain, 50 cents an hour. That's $2.25 minus 8 cents Social Security.
Oh, no.
And then I would get that check, and I would go up to Allen's 5 and 10 cent store and buy a model car and put it together until I finally got smart and decided to save my money to get a real car later on. But I kind of grew up in the pharmacy, graduated to be a sales clerk, and then kind of work in the back of the pharmacy. And as I went through high school and Kennesaw Junior College for the first 2 years, we became quite a team with the three of us. And I would straighten up the pharmacy, and Dad would complain that he couldn't find anything after I'd straightened it all up. And we just had a good time. The friendships from high school are just unreal. A lot of them are still here. Some of them are far away, but Facebook has connected us, and we're just thrilled that most all of our classmates have grown up to become strong families, strong Christians, just people that have done good things and still got those relationships.
Well, I don't know whether you're aware of it, but Alan wrote the thing that some very nice things about you.
Oh, no, I did not know that.
Well, one of them that I wanted to get into is how North Cobb Christian School came about.
Oh, yeah. Hallie, my oldest daughter, went to Ackworth pre-kindergarten, and it was in the basement, or it was kindergarten in the basement of the gymnasium, and things weren't going well. I think there were some faculty problems there. And we thought, when Hallie goes out in the backyard and wants to bury her homework, we know something's wrong, and she changed. So we said, let's start looking for some Christian schools, and most of them are too expensive. We got to a little church in Marietta called Grace Brethren Church, which had Grace Christian School, and said, this is the place for us. 33 kids, kindergarten through third grade. And we enrolled, and about a month later they announced they were stopping their school because they didn't have enough people in it. So another main couple and us decided this was not going to go away. So we reincorporated as a non-denominational Christian school, rented the building back from them for a few years, then started putting the land together here in Ackworth. So between Larry Nelson's parents and the guy that owned the quick shop over there, we put together 10 acres of land and started North Cobb Christian and built an 11,000 square foot building. So we went from 3 faculty and 33 up to around 300 or 400 children. And
how many?
300 or 400.
300 or 400,
at that
wow.
time.
Yeah.
It wasn't that many when we got into the crisis. 18% interest, Jimmy Carter era.
Yeah.
And my property and my father-in-law's property were put up as collateral. You know how banks are. And we got behind a couple of payments of $11,000 a month and almost lost our property and the school. But one Sunday afternoon, we just called in all the parents. We fit in the little cafeteria and said, we've got to come up with $70-something thousand by tomorrow morning, or they're going to foreclose on everything, including my house and the drugstore and my father's property. And said, if that's what happens, it happens. We're okay with it. And somebody said, well, pass a hat. And so I looked at him. I said, okay, so we passed a hat. $60,000 was in that hat.
Wow.
Wasn't pledges, it was money, and I'll have it in the morning. And we said, well, that's not enough. That's the way it is. And some guy yelled, pass it again. And we did, and it came out with over $80,000.
Wow.
Besides emotionally breaking up, I knew that God had this school in his hand. And from that point forward, I had left after my girls had graduated out of it because we wanted parents to be on the board. But today that school has 1,000 students, phenomenal faculty, huge sports program, and is doing very well. I think their budget is $10 million a year. And
wow.
But from that point, that Sunday afternoon, we knew that was God's school. We didn't do anything. It was God's school.
Tell me about how Ackworth has changed in your perspective over the last 50 years.
I think Ackworth has kept up. There's a rule of thumb about cities and how they go through life cycles, and we did exactly that. US 41 came over and the city business district went down, and we looked at empty buildings and things like that. And then I-75 came through, which kind of destroyed 41. And so we had to reinvent ourselves. And the leadership of this council, I'm not talking about just the current guys that have been in there 16 years, and nobody will run against them because they're so good. But the ones before, we never had a doubt that they had Ackworth's interest in mind. And as we learned things and did things, it just started snowballing on itself. Henry Chandler took a chance on us and opened his restaurant, and that's what started downtown. The restaurants came in. The city used most of its SPLOST money to complete what the Development Authority was wanting to do. Opened up Logan Park and really did some great things for, quote, that side of the tracks. So now we have a park side and a lakeside equally developed. Everybody's welcome in Ackworth. We've never had any racial problems or anything like that. I mean, we're just Ackworthians.
I like those terms, park side and lakeside,
Right.
as opposed to the other side of the tracks.
Right, exactly. And Alan and I, our new offices, executive offices, we named it Lakeside. We want other people to use the word Lakeside. We want people to use Parkside. But that's a city coming together and always making sure everybody's on the same page and doing exciting projects. The next one I'm now working on is through the Ackworth Arts Council. We need a performing arts center. So we're working with KSU and with an architect and other people to say just what would it look like. And we're going to fund privately all the studies and everything that needs to be done to get a concept. But this thing's going to be expensive, so we know it's years down the road, and eventually we'll figure out how to do it.
Where would you put it?
Hopefully on Parkside.
Okay.
Love to. But that's one of the processes is find enough land and parking to do that, to put together maybe a 500-600 seat theater along with black box theater and visual arts things. And Keith Parisi at Kennesaw is helping us, and so we're going to try it. That'll be the next big project while the city continues to improve the streets and do what they do. But Ackworth managed to figure out who it was and what it would be and take advantage of surrounding properties like Corps of Engineers, the fact that we're in a corner of Paulding, Bartow, Cherokee, and Cobb. Ackworth is in all those counties officially by the post office. So, you know, we're really making a place to go to. And I don't see many cities that have done that.